Hello. Well, what an interesting week we are stepping into. Finally, we have some relief from all of those planets that have been retrograde. And this week, we actually have Saturn moving direct, which is kind of awesome, especially for those of us who have been focused on doing our healing work and getting clear about who we are and what our soul's purpose is. But for those people who have not been doing their work, you may be feeling a bit lost or confused or overwhelmed, or kind of like you're drowning in a lake that you never belonged in the first place. And you're who I really want to talk to this week, because big changes are here and ready to be had, and it's up to us to embrace the change. And things can change, but that change starts with you. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about 4 things you can kind of focus on this week that are going to really support you in connecting within to your truth, who you're here to be, the purpose you're here to fulfill, because now is the time for you to be making giant leaps forward and actually manifesting everything that you're here to create. Okay. So the first step, as is with all things, the first step is always to connect to source, right? Connecting to whatever you call that source energy, whether you call it God or spirit or universe or goddess or mother or Krishna or Buddha or Allah or whatever you may call that energy, but that source energy, right? That energy from which we came, right? And what we're wanting to do by connecting into source energy is we're redirecting, because humans beings spend so much time and energy being focused out on looking for their answers outside of them, right? So whether they're, reading it in a book, or they're going to a guru, or they're listening to their friends, or they're following up with some podcast, or they're reading some self-help book, or whatever it is that they happen to be doing. But all of those things are all looking outside of them for the answers, right? But where are all of our answers? They're within, right? So connecting to that source is the first step in connecting to your answers, where your answers really lie. Okay. Now, the second thing is all about really changing our minds, right? And starting with changing the way that we perceive things and the way that we think about things, right? Because we spend so much time in our lives thinking about all of the things that we should do. I should do this, I should do that, I should do the other thing. I really want to do this, but no, I should do this, right? We spend so much time shooting all over our dreams that before long, all of our dreams just seem to vanish, right? But I am going to suggest that you flip that upside down and stop listening to the shoulds and start listening more to your dreams and what your heart is calling you to do, and thinking about what is it that I would really love to do that would bring me joy and happiness, and therefore raise my vibration, which would therefore have everyone around me resonate at a little bit higher of a vibrational pattern, right? Because that's really the difference that you're here to make, right? You're here to make the difference that only you can make, right? It's interesting because society, from the time that we're little, we're always being taught to conform, 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 you know, do it like your sister did it, or look at your brother, how he does everything so wonderfully, right? Be more like them, right? But really, the best way to parent a child is to encourage them to be them, to express love and light in their own unique and beautiful and magnificent way. And I am giving you permission to do that this week. Now, the next thing that we're going to do after we've connected to source and we've started changing our mindset, instead of focusing on the shoulds, we're going to start focusing on the things that we'd love to do, right? And then once we start focusing on those things that we would love to do, you will automatically see that how you're feeling will begin to change as well, right? Because when we're focused on what the heart desires, then it brings up these feelings of peace and love and joy and enlightenment, right? And then we're just we find ourselves being in this flow where, you know, we just are taking our next best step, and that leads to our next best step, which magically leads to our next best step, right? And before we know it, the day's over and it's been this magical, fulfilling day where we've accomplished more in just a few hours than we had in the last few weeks, right? So it's all about that following your heart's desire, which really starts having you living an inspired life, right? And compare that to how you might normally live life, right? We might normally live life from that place of what we should. Well, we should be doing this and we should be doing that, and this should get done and that should get done, and should, right? And what happens with all those shoulds? Just saying it so much is making me feel a little bit of anxiety, right? Like you start feeling a little anxious, you start feeling a little overwhelmed, you start feeling a little like, oh my gosh, this is just like too much, right? You know, like life's not meant to be that hard. If you ever have that thought, you're exactly right. That, my darling, is your soul trying to talk some common sense into you. Life is not meant to be that hard. Life is meant to be one next best step followed by the next best step, which just has you be in the flow, you know, in the flow of your heart's desire and literally walking your path of heaven on earth, right? So this week, just start noticing, like, where are my feelings? If your feelings are in that place of peace and love and joy and enlightenment, then you know, okay, I am on my soul's path. But if you start noticing yourself feeling anxious, overwhelmed, overburdened, you know, all like that, then chances are your ego has taken over and you're now following the path of should instead of the path of your heart. Okay. And then the fourth and final thing that I wanted to talk to you about this week is really about changing your behavior, right? So once you start focusing on moving towards what you love, you'll naturally start seeing the things that no longer serve you or no longer have you feeling joyful and loved. They'll just sort of start to slip away in a way. Right? You know, a lot of times we're afraid to like make big changes because we don't really want to confront what'll happen if we start moving in this new direction. But reality is, when you shift directions, the stuff that no longer serves you just kind of falls away. There's no confrontation, there's no big ordeal. It just is what it is, right? So It's funny because the mind wants to make us think that, if I start following the path of my heart, then my whole life is just going to be turmoil and craziness. And that's a lie that your ego is telling you, trying to convince you to stay small and don't shine your light too brightly, right? But that's not why you're here. You're here to express the limitless in your own unique and beautiful way. The problem is you like most people have fallen under the curse of your own thoughts and beliefs, right? We start doubting ourselves or putting these limits upon ourselves that start causing us to play smaller and smaller and hide and get smaller and littler until we start to disappear. And all of a sudden we feel like we're drowning in our own lives, right? But it's time for you to push off from the bottom of the lake and rise above and start being who you came here to be. It's time for you to let go of all of those fears and doubts and limiting beliefs and connect with the magnificence of who you really are. And again, you do that by following the 4 steps. Connect to your source, and then start looking at your thoughts that you're having in your head, and make sure you're choosing those thoughts that are in alignment with what your soul's calling you to do, right? And once you start following that path, you're going to start feeling more inspired. And then you're going to just find yourself in the flow, taking the next best step, followed by the next best step. And you're going to start feeling like the you that you came here to be. So I hope that that's helpful. If you should need any support along the way, please feel free to set up a one-on-one appointment with me. We can always do a discovery call and figure out, what is wanted and needed, for you to be able to master these steps and really own your own true self and let your love and light shine and create your heaven on earth, because that's really all that I want for you. And the truth is, it's really all that you want for yourself. So let's get on the ball and start creating that this week.